I'm David Skandera.
I'm Justus Burkett.
And today we're here to find out, is Shrek the greatest movie ever made?
Man, you gotta warn somebody before you just crack one off. My mouth was open and everything.
Believe me, donkey, if it was me, you'd be dead.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Donkey!
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. I'm David Skandera. Whoa. I was bad at saying those words. I'm David Skandera, joined as always by my co-host and dense, irritating, miniature beast of burden, Justus Burkett.
The irritating bit is really the part where I agree with Shrek the most there, about the character of Donkey. He's a talking donkey whose name is Donkey.
Yeah.
And the thing with Eddie Murphy's performance in this movie is not that it is bad. It is that there is so much of it.
Yeah, this is a full dose of Murphy.
There is so much of it. Like the joke with the performance from the other characters is like, wow, this guy never shuts up and it's really annoying. And it's like the whole let's take the annoying side character, comic relief side character from every Disney movie and make him the second lead of the movie feels like it, to me, was a bad decision. But we'll get to it.
On the pod again. Can't wait to get on the pod again.
Yeah, he just starts breaking out in song a bunch of times in
Yeah.
this movie. Yeah, there's just so much of it.
Every song that he sings in this movie, I only know because of this movie. I've never heard them in the wild.
You've heard On the Road Again.
Maybe. I mean, probably
Everyone's heard On the Road Again.
Did Nellie Wilson do that? Maybe
Nellie Wilson.
Nellie Wilson, Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson.
Yes, Willie Nelson did do that.
Okay, maybe I've heard that one.
I like the idea of like a Willie Nelson cover artist who just calls himself Nellie Wilson.
No, that's the dark reflection of Willie Nelson that doesn't smoke weed.
Inverted Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
Bizarro Willie Nelson.
Oh God. My brain is fucking mush today, as you can tell.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I had a good week. How are you, other than your brain being mush?
I'm good.
Good?
Yeah, I had a good week at work. Nothing too crazy. And been feeling really good. Is there anything that you want to recommend to people?
Yeah, the Podmaster had been talking up The Love Witch, which is like kind of a parody satire of like a 60s 60s sitcom aesthetic, but also like a Hitchcock Vertigo-esque sort of thriller film thing going on. But it's a parody of 60s culture in film and society and stuff. And it's also about a witch who makes dudes so horny for her that they die.
Sounds like my kind of woman.
And the Podmaster had been talking up this movie to me for a while. And finally sat me down and was like, we're going to watch Love Witch. And I watched Love Witch with the Podmaster, and it was great. I thought it was a work of genius, ? Definitely more blown away with it than I expected to be. So if you haven't seen The Love Witch from 2016, check it out. It's fun.
Cool.
Fun. It's a good time. Good parody. What about you?
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I've been listening to sea shanties recently, which is true.
Yes.
I'm a known fan of sea shanties and maritime folk music.
Yes.
So I'm back on that kick, but I snuck into Dennis Quaid's Reagan movie.
I'm glad you're talking about this on mic.
I went to go see Alien Romulus, and then afterwards I snuck into Reagan. Okay, I know we got to talk about Shrek. Can you just set a 5-minute timer on your phone and just let me talk about Reagan for a minute?
Yeah.
I feel like God has appointed me to be his emissary to talk about the Reagan movie.
You might even say you are the Ronald Reagan of talking about Reagan. In that people view this as a divine appointment. Yeah, I'll set a 5-minute timer and you can regale us with your Reagan thoughts for 5 minutes. Hold on. We're gonna wait until you're done laughing. 3. The podmaster has to come listen to you talk about Reagan. All right, you got 5 minutes starting now.
Okay, so I sneak into Reagan, and the theater is packed. I mean, as packed as like a theater can be up here, where like, you know, everything behind that bar, the upper rows, are all full.
Wow.
And we have a few stragglers down in the front.
I'm shocked that the crowd was that big.
Yeah, well, it's all old white people.
Well, yeah.
And they all applauded at the end of the movie. So Dennis Quaid has been promoting this Ronald Reagan movie that he's been doing. It's directed by a guy who has before this done like direct-to-video Bratz movies.
That's insane.
And like a Three Ninjas sequel. Like he's done dick. He's done a lot of it, but he hasn't really done anything.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie was a conservative fever dream. I was like losing my mind watching this fucking thing. So like I feel like the worst thing that any biopic about a figure on the level of someone like Reagan can do is treat the subject with like kid gloves,
right?
And not like exploring the complexities of who they are. And I think even like a movie that had a pro Reagan perspective,
right,
could have done something to explore the complexities of who Reagan was.
Right, they could have like treated like the war on drugs with some nuance.
Yeah.
And been like, hey, the conservative administration thought this was the best way to handle this at the time. In retrospect, we realized that this caused people pain and suffering.
Even like Spielberg's Lincoln movie, acknowledged that like Lincoln's decision to ratify the
Emancipation Proclamation,
free the slaves, that was as much a political move as it
was
a moral one. Yeah, you get a history point, I guess. I don't know. I was trying to remember what amendment it was. So like there's a way to do that, but this doesn't do that. It just buys into the conservative fairy tale that Ronald Reagan never did anything wrong.
I think it's the 13th Amendment.
And
which I know because of, speaking of Reagan, sorry, hold on, let me pause your timer for this aside. I think I know that the slavery amendment is the 13th one because of Killer Mike's song Reagan, right?
Yeah.
Where he says, you think I am bullshitting, just read the 13th amendment.
Slavery was abolished unless you are in prison. Yeah.
Oh man, the end of that song when he fucking says Ronald Wilson Reagan, and each of those names has 6 letters in it, and then he just goes 6, 6, 6. I was like, holy fucking shit. The first time I listened to that, I was like, Killer Mike's a fucking genius. He just made Ronald Reagan the Antichrist.
I think that was a thing. I think that was already a thing.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, because everyone's like, oh, the president's the fucking Antichrist.
Right. Everybody always thinks... You know what's funny is there's still so many weird conservatives on Twitter saying that about Obama.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's been out of office for like a decade. Like... Give up. If it was gonna be him, he had his chance.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Let me start your Reagan timer. There you go.
So yeah, it just buys into the conservative dogmatic fairy tale that Reagan, never did anything wrong and was a servant of God to destroy communism.
Yeah.
And it just the digital de-aging in this movie is horrific.
I saw I was looking at Letterboxd reviews after I read yours. I haven't seen the movie. I was just reading them for fun. And someone did say that Jon Voight looked like a Resident Evil monster with the de-aging effect.
Yes. Yeah, so the movie's narrated by Jon Voight, who plays like an ex-KGB.
Human sack of shit, Jon Voight.
An ex-KGB spy who in this movie, they fictionalize him there. He's like an amalgamation of real people. Who has been keeping tabs on Reagan since he was an actor. And his job in this movie is to narrate the movie and then also occasionally pop up in the movie during like it's all told in flashback, but to like watch a speech that Reagan's doing and be like, "Oh no, he's going to come for us." And he's got this awful de-aging makeup or CGI effect. And Dennis Quaid in particular looks like the scene in the original Batman where the Joker doesn't have any makeup on.
Jack Nicholson,
Yeah.
Joker face.
There are so many like side actors and background actors in this movie who I thought were intentionally like throwing the scene. Like, I'm going to do this performance as terrible as I possibly can and just hope that they don't put it in the movie, except they put it in the movie.
That's insane.
Every scene is just like a soap opera. It's just Reagan being like, I'm going to be president now. And then the next scene he's president, I'm going to stand up to the Soviets. And then the next scene he goes to meet with Gorbachev. It's so, and then the climax, they spend 5 minutes building up to him saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Yeah.
Where it's like the speechwriters are like writing in, like, oh, this is really good. We should get it to him. And then they hand him the folder and he looks at it and he like nods to himself. And then his advisors are like, you can't say that. You'll ruin, how many years of diplomacy. You can't say that. And he's like, I gotta say it. God told me to, and I'm here to stop the Soviets. And then he does it. And that's the climax of the movie. He drops it, and then
just saying Mr. Gorbachev.
No, he does. That's but they build up to it, and then he says it, and then it's like hard cut to Muzak instrumental cover of "Sweet Child of Mine" as footage of like youth in Berlin tearing down the wall plays.
Yeah.
I fucking lost it at that point. I was dying.
You have run your 5 minute timer out, so we're gonna wrap this up. But that sounds fucking insane.
Yes, it was fucking insane. I really tried hard not to laugh for most of the movie. Lost it at the end with the Sweet Child of Mine needle drop. And then the movie ends with him in the throes of Alzheimer's and, like retired on his ranch. And Nancy's like talking to the Secret Service agent, and she's like, you can't let him go ride his horse anymore. He's not okay. And then Dennis Quaid clearly playing Reagan the way that he's been playing him the whole time, which is like a drunk idiot that just wandered onto set. The Secret Service guy's like, hey, Mr. President, you probably can't go ride the horse. And then Reagan's like, just give me one more ride. And this sappy-ass orchestral version of Take Me Home, Country Roads plays as he rides into the sunset.
How dare they?
It's a terrible, awful piece of shit that is also hilarious, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. I assume they depict him being shot by John Hinckley.
They
Jr.
open with Hinckley shooting him.
Oh fuck! That's funny.
Yeah. There's so many more things that I didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Like the terrible, like Forrest Gump style inserting Dennis Quaid back into like historical footage.
What? They do that shit?
Yeah, they put his face on Reagan's face.
What?
No, actually the funniest one, he's debating Carter, and then at one point he's debating Walter Mondale. And what they do is there's the debate stage, so there's two of them on stage. And there's a shot from the side of like Dennis Quaid in the foreground and a grainy ass footage of Walter Mondale just like cut and pasted and stuck behind a podium in the background that they got from footage of the debate. And they do that with Carter too.
What the flying fuck are you talking about?
He's like a hologram. He's like a fucking hologram
in old footage.
Yeah,
that's fucking what?
Like it's like it's like the opposite of the Forrest Gump thing, where Forrest Gump is the new footage reinserted into old footage. They put old footage into new footage.
Into the shot, just spliced dead dudes into the shot.
Yeah, there's so much terrible green screen in the
Carter's
movie.
Not a dead dude. Carter's still around.
Carter's alive, and I think they get an actor at one point to play him.
He has outlived Reagan.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, Jimmy.
Hell yeah, Jimmy.
Building houses.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's my Reagan review.
Yeah, not necessarily a media recommendation per se.
I mean, if you are a sadistic fuck and you occasionally watch bad movies like I do,
yeah,
sneak into this one and you'll have a good time.
But don't spend money on it.
Don't spend money on it.
Yeah.
that's that. We're here to talk about Shrek for
Shrek.
the TGMEM-iversary.
In many ways, the Reagan of animated characters, in that he.
I don't think Shrek let anyone die of AIDS.
Okay, sorry. I should amend this. The impact of the film Shrek on 3D animated children's media is, in my opinion, not too dissimilar from the impact that the Reagan presidency had upon the United States of America. I think Shrek ruined 3D children's animated films.
Okay. So this is the bad movie.
Yeah.
We did good movie, bad movie.
Yeah.
You picked this because it's a bad movie
That's
in your
right.
opinion.
Yes.
Just lay it on me.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about it throughout the episode.
Yeah.
But give me your Shrek rant. Give me your history with this thing.
Yeah. There's not too much for me to talk about here, really. I have basically like one big point that I will try and articulate concisely. But like in terms of my history with it, like I was born in 1992. I saw this when I was a kid like everybody else did. I remember me and my brothers quoting some of this movie to each other a little bit, right? Then I also have a brother who's like 6 years younger than me. So because of that, children's animated entertainment continued to be viewed by me after I had sort of quote unquote outgrown it. And some children's entertainment, like previous episode, The Prince of Egypt, like some of the Pixar films, Monsters Inc., Toy Story, Ratatouille, right? Movies like that, when I quote unquote outgrew them, and my little brother, who's 6 years my junior, was really into them, I would always be happy when they were on and be like, yeah, this is a great movie. And anytime Shrek was on, which was not often, because my parents weren't a big fan of this one either, and I think avoided it being played as much as they could. Anytime Shrek was on, it just played worse and worse for me, and that's when I started disliking this movie, is when I really started, like, as like a young teen, comparing this side by side with other films of its same like genre, and just being like, it can't hold a candle to these Disney Pixar movies, and it's like a poor imitation of what they are executing well, and even its like fairy tale satire thing, Princess Bride had already done better. Monty Python and the Holy Grail had already done better. I know that's not a fairy tale, it's Arthurian legend or whatever, but it's like a lot of the jokes in Shrek have the tone of like Monty Python and the Holy Grail jokes. But the thing is, in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the jokes are funny because you're allowed to make jokes about like tits and cocks and balls in Monty Python. And because this is Shrek, we have to like fucking skirt around that in ways that make the joke unfunny. When they repeat the fucking he's compensating for something joke for like the third fucking time in this movie towards the end, I was like, I fucking get it, and I wish you would just say cock. Like, just say cock. Like, just make this a PG-13 movie and just say cock. Because doing the same fucking euphemism joke over and over and over again doesn't make it funnier. It just, I'm like, yeah, I get it. So anyway, that's the thing with me in this movie. Is I just feel like it is a lazy copy of other movies that have done the things that this movie is attempting way, way better. And because this movie like was popular, it then just inspired all of these little Shrek clones. And basically, I don't think you get the Emoji Movie without Shrek, right? It's like all the same shit. And yes, the Emoji Movie is worse, but I don't think the Emoji Movie exists without Patient Zero being Shrek. I'm getting off my soapbox now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you, I saw this as a child. I maybe even saw it in the theaters. This came out around the time where I'm like a little bit iffy on what I did and didn't see in theaters. But I know we watched this a shitload, and we quoted it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't entirely disagree that this led to a lot of bad trends in children's animated films. Like, I feel like Donkey being the breakout character from this movie led to the Minions. Where we're making the side character that is the comic relief character one of the most important characters in the movie.
Right. And also
And
just like
even,
a
like-
little chatterbox, and it's like it evolves from Eddie Murphy doing like Eddie Murphy banter to eventually it mutates and mutates until it's the Minions and they're not even speaking a fucking language anymore.
Yeah.
And they're just like, because it's like, oh yeah, what people liked was just that they never shut the fuck up, right?
Mhm.
That's what people like about that type of character. Isn't the jokes they're making, it's the fact that they never, for one fucking second, shut the fuck up.
But I remember watching this a bunch. I also remember loving the sequel. Like loving this movie as a kid. Loving the sequel. I don't remember a ton from the sequel, actually.
Is that the one where the gingerbread man gets big?
Yeah.
Because I remember that one, whichever one that was.
When I saw the third Shrek movie once in theaters, and then I knew, like, okay, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the fourth one that they did.
Yeah.
Where they like have kids or whatever. I don't remember. Yeah, I think the gingerbread man gets big for them, like attacking the castle and while the fairy godmother's singing, holding out for a hero.
Yeah, if that's the second one, that's the last one I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a thing at the like local movie theater when I was growing up where they would do like the summer movie, like
Yeah.
you get a pass for a whole week of movies and you just pay like fucking $10 or something.
Yeah, we did that a ton as a kid.
Yeah. So me and my brother did that as kids, and it was a thing where like he and I would take my younger brother, and I just remember sitting in that theater and that being one of the very first times in my entire life that I was sitting in a movie theater having a bad time. Like one of the first times where I was like, I'm at the movies and I wish I wasn't. You know? Which hadn't really happened to me much at that point in my life. And people say that's the good one. So if that's number 2, I guess I disagree.
I remember that being in conversations of like an actually good sequel.
Uh-huh.
I remember kids being like, they never, the story being, they never make any good sequels.
Right.
And then being like, but there's Empire Strikes Back and Spider-Man 2 and Shrek 2.
If you're gonna...
We hadn't seen Godfather Part 2 yet, I guess.
If you're gonna put a 3D animated children's sequel in that conversation, Toy Story 2 is right there, which is a better movie than Toy Story 1. And both of those movies are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think this is definitely like a step down from Pixar. But I also think one of the reasons that we gravitated, or my brother and I and my friends at school gravitated toward this movie so much, was because it had an edge to it. And it's like, okay, you can do fart jokes and say ass and damn in this movie, and it's still relatively okay for kids.
Yeah.
And also, Eddie Murphy was on top of the fucking world at that point.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
this is like, I went to go see The Adventures of Pluto Nash because I loved Eddie Murphy so much as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think this is maybe the start of him losing a bit of that grip that he had on the world.
Yeah. The edginess is a good point. And this movie is at its best, I think, when it is doing the crude, irreverent satire thing. When this movie is sort of leaning into being Mel Brooks-esque is, I think, when this movie is at its best. And I think when it's at its worst is when it tries to make me give a shit about any of these fucking characters. Because I do not. I don't give a shit. I know people think Cameron Diaz is good in this movie. I don't know who Princess Fiona is. The movie barely lets you meet her. And I don't give a fucking shit about this character. So when it's like the whole second and third act is like her and Shrek's quote unquote relationship, I'm like, okay, you can't just put Eels, an admittedly great band that I love, over a sequence between two characters I don't give a flying fuck about and expect to have my heartstrings tugged.
But
go back to the fart jokes. Those were better.
But they make blow-up animals together with a frog and a snake.
Which is disturbing. And they murder those animals, and apparently they exhale helium. And the gag is sort of funny, but what I don't give a shit about is like the movie being like, and this is true love, and just be yourself because you're beautiful the way you are. It's like, no, like go back to him fucking wiping his ass or whatever. Like that's what this movie is. You think you're giving me a moral lesson? Okay, motherfucking Aesop. Like, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't work for me. Anyway, Shrek. We open on an outhouse.
Yeah, it's the storybook of the princess
Oh,
and
yeah.
the dragon.
And he wipes his ass.
And
with
he
the page
goes,
from the
"What
story.
a load of!" And then there's a flushing sound to cut off shit.
Yeah.
And he's wiping his ass with a page. And I realized this time that it's like he's in an outhouse and there's
Yeah.
a flushing noise.
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense.
No, there's no flushing in an outhouse.
But it doesn't matter because somebody once told me.
How do you feel about the song All Star by the band Smash Mouth?
So here's the thing. I can't separate this movie entirely from the meme status that it has gained on the internet.
Of course not.
Neither
Neither can I.
It's like there are no less than 10 memes that you can take from this movie.
And I want to
think.
say now, and hopefully not repeat this later, because I know I have a tendency to do that on this show. I think that has led me to hate this movie historically more than I actually hate this movie. I'm not going to tip my hand on my verdict, right? But I do think its constant presence
It's compounded by the
Yes.
fact that everyone's been memeing it all these years.
Yes. And also because, like, I am very much a person where once I see a meme for more than, like, a month, I am like, fuck that meme. I never want to see that shit again. I am so tired of that. Like, that's very much my relationship to memes. So, like, the fact that Shrek has endured as, like, a source of online memery for so long, I feel like that has compounded my ill will towards this film in a way that the film itself is not responsible for. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But
Yeah. As far as the song All Star, like I'm not gonna throw on All Star in the morning while I'm getting ready. It's not on my gym playlist.
Despite you and I being two men who bear a physical resemblance to the character of Shrek.
Yes.
I would say both of us.
Yes.
When he's bathing in the mud and you get an angle from him an angle of him his bare back, and he's got like those little like sort of back boob things. The, like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh hey, I have those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Nice to see my physique represented on screen.
Yeah. Big stinky fat guys. I'm gonna hit you with a hot take though.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly is a hot take. I think every needle drop in this movie works incredibly well for this movie.
I really can't get on board with that because I know this might be considered heresy to some people. The fucking Hallelujah drop sucks shit. It sucks shit.
Oh, I was watching that and I was like, I'm surprised. That's the thing with this. I'm surprised that these are working for me.
Okay.
Because there's multiple ones. Bad Reputation,
Mm.
I am completely over Bad Reputation needle drops.
Yeah.
When that comes on, when he's fighting the knights,
I actually
works really well.
I actually do kind of like that one. I kind of like that one.
And then I don't know the fucking I'm on my Wii.
Oh yes.
I don't know that fucking song.
Wait. I feel like I need to look up. I need to look up what that song is. I mean, I know it's called "I'm on My Way," but I need to know who performs that. I don't think it's the Proclaimers. It is the Proclaimers.
Oh, it is.
Yes, it's called "I'm on My Way" by the Proclaimers. That song is the fact that this movie contains "I'm on My Way" by the Proclaimers earns it another half star in my book because that song in and of itself is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
It is so funny to hear a guy in a very heavy Scottish accent sing the line "I'm on my way" because it's just "I'm on my way." Yeah, it's great.
Even that was like,
That one's good.
This is working. I thought the Hallelujah one was working.
I fucking hate that drop.
What else have we fucking got in here?
It's not the Cohen one. It's also not the Buckley one. It's some other.
Yeah, it's someone else.
It's some other Hallelujah cover.
And I think I don't think we need more covers of Hallelujah.
Yeah.
But because it's somebody else and it just fits that montage a little bit
They
better
also
than the other versions.
cut out the line "and maybe there's a God above," and I was like, was that too edgy for this PG family film? Is the idea that perhaps God does not exist? They were like, you can't include that. They skip straight to "all I've ever learned from love."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but All Star is, I mean, what can you say about it? It's a song for a generation.
Yeah.
And again, like, I'm not going to listen to it on my own. It fits really well for the movie and this opening credit sequence where we just get to see Shrek be disgusting.
I do think that Shrek being disgusting at the beginning of the movie is, again, the mode of this movie that works the best for me. To the point where, when I was watching it last night in advance of this record, because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, I was like, did I accidentally pick a movie that I don't dislike? Right? I was like, maybe I'm gonna like Shrek in the first act, and then basically the second act happened, and I was like, oh, never mind, I hate this.
Oh, okay. See, by the time they had finished singing All Star,
yeah,
I was like, I remember every micro detail of this movie.
You definitely saw it more than I did then, because like it didn't.
I must have.
Yeah, it didn't have that same attachment for me. Where I was like, there were whole scenes in this movie that I didn't remember happened. But this was like a couple time rental in my household, not like a major.
Yeah, I think we owned this.
Okay,
I think we probably had the VHS and then
we
switched
never
over
owned
to
it.
the
I'm
DVD.
pretty sure my mother would not have allowed that, because this is very much the type of movie that my mom would not want to watch over and over again.
I don't know how my parents felt about it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't enough of a problem for them to keep it out of the house. And my parents were a lot more restrictive of this kind of things that my brother and I watched and listened to when we were kids.
Yeah.
But I was watching this movie, and like you, it's been a long time since I've seen it. I watched it in preparation for this recording, and no less than a dozen times did I quote Donkey's lines in sync with him, word for word.
That's insane to me. I was definitely doing the thing where he would say something, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, my brother said that to each other, for a year," or like, "Oh yeah, I remember hearing that on the third grade playground," or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yes. So Shrek is a disgusting ogre who lives in a swamp, as we all know.
Yeah.
They're fucking rounding up fairy tale creatures and putting them in concentration camps, I guess. The one, okay, I will call out jokes I laughed at in this movie, because I did laugh. Unlike the Emoji Movie, I did laugh at Shrek. There were a couple jokes that worked for me in this movie. One of the things that made me laugh in this movie is when Pinocchio is being, like, Geppetto brings Pinocchio to the fucking Farquaad troops, and one of the soldiers says, 5 shillings for the possessed toy. About Pinocchio. I thought that was pretty fun.
I laughed at when the villagers are like grabbing their torches and pitchforks to go, round up fairy tale creatures, and they run into Shrek.
Oh yeah.
And he's like bullying them, and he's like, "I'm gonna squeeze the jelly from your eyes." Actually, it's quite good on toast. That was really funny.
That bit is fine for me until he does the big roar and everyone stands there looking dumbfounded, and then he goes, "This is the part where you run away," and then they all go, "Ah!"
No,
I
thought that was funny too.
I think that joke fucking blows, and I think that type of joke is exactly how we get the Emoji Movie.
Well, this is definitely like a joke a minute kind of movie.
Yeah, and that would be fine if more than I don't know, 10% of the jokes landed, but I don't think they do. I was mostly stone-faced watching this movie.
So I loved watching this again.
That's fine.
I'm just going to come out and say it.
You're allowed.
This shit fucking slaps.
All right.
Most of the jokes in this landed for me extremely well.
Okay.
And I don't think a lot of it was nostalgia.
All right.
I mean, some of it was. Some of it was. But yeah, all of the Shrek roaring, and this is the part where you run away, and him trying to be big and scary was really working for me. And then them rounding up the fairy tale creatures and some of the fairy tale creature related jokes.
Some of those are pretty good.
I'm glad that this movie peppers these throughout the movie and doesn't do what the sequels do and decides to actually make them characters. Like, I don't need more Pinocchio.
Right. That's true.
Which the other movies don't. Which the other movies decide to do.
Yeah, that is true. I do like that, the gag with the gingerbread man is basically just that one scene, Like, shit like that, I'm like, yes, thank you for not putting him in the rest of the movie. So I do agree with that. I'm glad that you found this movie enjoyable to watch. I'm not mad at you for liking it. I'm very happy for you. I wish that I felt that way, but I don't. You know what I did find funny?
Yeah.
The Podmaster's commentary when she was watching this movie with me.
Okay.
When she also was enjoying watching Shrek more than I was. When Shrek goes cannonballs into the mud at the beginning, during the opening credits, she said, "I wonder if we slowed it down if we could see Shrek's balls." Which made me laugh. And then later on, when we saw those villagers, because it's the first like human characters that you glimpse who aren't, Shrek. Who's not a human, he is in fact an ogre. The Podmaster said, "It feels like I'm watching a movie made in RuneScape." Because the animation in this movie, I know it was made in 2001, but to my previous point, so was Monsters Incorporated. The animation in this movie looks bad.
Great.
It looks bad. This movie looks bad. It hurts my eyes to look at. I hate how the fucking human characters look. I hate how they move. Shrek looks good. Shrek looks good. It's clear that the animation effort went to the character of Shrek. Donkey is animated pretty well because Donkey has a more cartoonish, exaggerated character design. The dragon looks fine. The human characters look like ass.
I think this movie, great might be a bit of a stretch.
The backgrounds are so bland. They're so barren.
I think this movie looks really good for the time. Is it on the level of Pixar? No, but also this was like an early DreamWorks movie.
Yeah.
And even today, no one's really doing it like Pixar.
That's true.
But like the human characters, this was the first time I can remember seeing human characters that looked at all realistic.
They just look so uncanny valley to me. It's almost like I wish they made their proportions more exaggerated and cartoony, like they do in Ratatouille, right? It's like those the Ratatouille human characters. Most of the characters in Ratatouille are human, and they have big exaggerated cartoon proportions. They got big eyes and outlandishly huge noses and little thin necks and stuff. And it's like, it makes them look better, like The Incredibles too, right? Another Pixar movie. It's like, the more you cartoonify their appearance, the less of the uncanny valley thing you get, right? But I feel like Shrek is doing this hyper-realistic thing with its characters, and it, like, as a result, I'm like, I just feel like I'm watching, like, PS3 cutscenes. And it's not entertaining to watch as a film.
I think keeping the human characters realistic makes more sense to separate them from the fairy tale characters, because we already have the fairy tale creatures being cartoonish and Shrek's proportions being weird, and Fiona when she's an ogre, her ogre proportions being all over the place. I think making the human characters, in particular Fiona, if you exaggerate them too much, then that distinction between the fairy tale characters and the humans doesn't work.
But then I almost wish that this was just a live action movie. And I know DreamWorks Animation was the ones making this, and that would just be a totally different situation. But it's like, I almost feel like if that's the point, like, just put a guy in a big ogre suit, right? And put a guy in ogre makeup, and then just film the rest with actors. Just do this live action and do it more like a Mel Brooks movie, right? Where it's like, oh, we're parodying fucking fairy tales.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Just the Uncanny Valley thing really takes me out of it.
It is a little Uncanny Valley, but I think I was watching it and it still looked impressive to me.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I couldn't do better.
Yeah.
I'll admit that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to animate.
So yeah, I guess we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree.
And
there's going to be a lot of that on this
I think we're going to
episode.
agree to disagree on this next point, because we got to talk about Eddie Murphy as Donkey.
Yeah.
There is a lot of Eddie Murphy in this movie.
Yes.
However,
Mm-hmm.
I think casting Eddie Murphy in this role is the same, is approaching the level of like Galaxy Brain comedic animated family film casting as like Robin Williams as the genie in Aladdin.
Okay. I didn't know what you were going to say and if I was going to get mad or not. But I don't disagree.
I think Eddie Murphy makes this character work in a way that no one else could have.
Yes. I don't disagree in that. I also find the genie in Aladdin a little annoying
Okay.
at times.
And I think that
Yeah.
is part of the point, and they
Right.
do hammer home that joke a lot.
Yeah.
However, I think Eddie Murphy's kind of slam dunking every line in this movie.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So here's my feelings on Eddie Murphy in this movie. I think he is good. I think he's good as Donkey. I think he's good voice casting for this role. And it is sort of Genie in Aladdin-esque, where he's like, they're just letting him riff.
Yeah.
They're sort of animating the character based on the riffing that he does at times, and that is clear, and that's also what happened with Robin Williams in Aladdin. And that all works for me. I think it's not an Eddie Murphy performance problem at all.
Do you think it's a writing problem?
I think it's less a writing problem, and maybe for me, more of like, well, yeah, a writing problem because they leave too much air for it.
Mm-hmm.
But also kind of an editing problem, where it's just like, I'm seeing so much of him that it's like his thing is funny, but I get so tired of it so fast, right? Where I'm like, if he was a lighter spice in this movie, if there was like 20% less Donkey, then I feel like I would appreciate Donkey so much more for what he's bringing to this thing. But the movie is mostly Donkey.
I feel like this movie doesn't leave any gas in the tank for future Donkey.
Right.
So, like, I haven't seen Shrek 2. I didn't rewatch Shrek 2. Probably won't. But, like, by the time we get to Shrek 2 and 3, like, how much have we worn out our goodwill with Donkey? Is it the Jack Sparrow problem?
Right. For me, I'm hitting that at the end of the first act, right? I'm like, oh, hey, Eddie Murphy's kind of killing this. I remembered finding this performance annoying, but right now I'm like having some fun watching this character. And then around the end of the first act, I'm like, and now it's annoying, and there's still an hour left in this movie. So I don't know, maybe my tolerance is just lower than some other people's, but like that's what was happening with me, where I was like, this performance is good. His jokes are pretty funny. He's riffing, he's doing his thing, he's a great comedian. And then, like, towards the end of Act 1, I'm like, I can only listen to a stand-up improv for so long.
You
And
definitely
this-
need some Tic Tac or something, because your breath stinks!
Yeah, and that's kind of that's a funny delivery. The way he says that is funny. And then he does, like, 800 more of those.
And they're all funny. I'm making waffles.
Again, I can only listen to a stand-up improv for so long. Any stand-up. Whether they are the most talented, whether they are the Eddie Murphy of comedians or not, right? It's just like, I just don't need to listen to anybody riff for that long, which I know is ironic considering I'm talking into a microphone on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
But I've never claimed to be a comedian. Anyway.
Yeah. So Donkey runs away, runs into Shrek.
Yes.
And they're rounding up fairy tale creatures, and they
Yeah.
go back to his swamp. And Donkey's talking a lot and making a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
And
And
then-
Shrek's just trying to eat his fucking meal for God's sake. Which I related to.
Yeah.
The Podmaster did ask me if Donkey reminded me of her, and I was like, no, absolutely not. You are nowhere near this annoying. She seemed to think that she is a Donkey-esque figure in my life if I'm Shrek, and I was like, no, absolutely not. You're like way less irritating to me. But anyway, yeah. So he's just trying to get a quiet bite to eat.
And
Donkey's
then
yapping away.
he discovers that his swamp has become the new, like, reservation for
Pretty
fairy tale creatures.
pretty inexplicably, like they don't explain why or how this happened.
Yeah.
They just all show up at once. Which is fine. And oh, also we forgot to mention it, but when they're rounding up the fairy tale creatures, you do see the Farquaad logo for the first time, which is just alarmingly similar to the Facebook logo.
Yeah.
Which is funny because this movie came out first.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, did Mark Zuckerberg model the Facebook logo off of the Farquaad?
Is Mark Zuckerberg compensating for something?
Is he just a huge Shrek fan? I mean, the generation probably lines up more or less. He's a little older than us. Not by that much.
Yeah.
But, anyway. Yeah, so Shrek is pissed off. What are you doing in my swamp?
What are you doing in my swamp? Sorry. I think my brain is rotted from this movie.
That's fine. I do have a question for you though.
yeah.
We talked about Eddie Murphy.
Mike Myers.
Yeah. How do you feel about Mike Myers in this movie?
So I know he took over the role from Chris Farley.
Yes, who sadly passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, respect to Chris Farley, I don't think he would have worked for this character. I think Mike Myers is doing really, really good, but unfortunately, because there is so much Eddie Murphy, he has to kind of play second fiddle to Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think his character choices in the vocal performance are good. I wouldn't characterize it as bad voice acting. It just sometimes is a little bland to me.
I was feeling that too.
Yeah.
I think there are some times where it sounds like Mike Myers is a little bored.
Yeah. Yes. Right? And I think it's partially because Eddie Murphy's getting to do all the fun shit. And he's like, oh, I have to fucking deliver my 8th line about how I just want everybody to leave me alone.
Yeah, because he has to be funny and he has to be mean, but he also has to be the emotional heart of the film.
Yes, and I think that is a huge mistake.
I don't think it's a huge mistake, but I think him in his vocal performance is struggling to find that middle ground between all of those things.
It's challenging for an actor to do all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be doing a Scottish accent.
He's a Scott-ish.
Scott-ish.
Emphasis on the ish. Yeah. But the accent, I mean, it's fairy tale land, so I don't give a shit that his accent sometimes does not sound entirely convincingly Scottish. Because who knows what ogres sound like. Yeah. Also, okay, so like the fairy tale creatures I mean, you've seen Shrek, you know how it goes. The fairy tale creatures aren't gonna fucking leave because they're in a concentration camp that is Shrek Swamp. And so he's like, I need to fucking deal with the person who's in charge of this. And the only person who knows where to go is Donkey. So he fucking goes off with Donkey. When they're talking, it might be before this, or it might be like when they're going off to Farquaad's castle, is the first time Shrek tells Donkey his name. And this really stuck out to me this time, the way Mike Myers delivers him saying his own name for the first time. He sounds like he's making up his own name on the spot.
He does that with Fiona too.
Yeah.
When Fiona asks, he's like unsure of how to. The way he says it, it comes off really weird.
It sounds like he
and awkward.
Has no name or is making up a fake, like a pseudonym. Like he's like, Kaiser Shrek say. Kaiser Soze?
Yeah.
Sorry, you looked at me like you were confused.
Yeah, it was a weird, I didn't expect you to pull Kaiser Soze out of your ass.
Never mind, I'm not going to make that joke.
The usual sus Shreks.
The usual, fuck. Whatever. Anyway. When they put, Snow White when the 7 dwarves show up in Shrek's house.
Yeah.
And they put Snow White on the table, and he says, dead broad off the table.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
That's funny.
I laughed at that.
That's a funny one.
That is kind of funny.
I also like the wolf, the big bad wolf in the bed.
Yeah.
He's like, do you mind, or whatever he says. That's fun.
like that one less than dead broad off the table.
Dead broad off the table's good.
Yeah. Dead broad off the table, I was like, that's like a fucking Mel Brooks joke.
Yeah, or and a lot of the gross out stuff, like him pulling out his earwax and melting and like making a candle out of it. That's like really creative gross out humor that Mel Brooks would do.
Again, the gross out humor in this movie works for me. I like this the most when it's just like, oh, he fucking farts and shits a bunch and lights his earwax on fire and fucking picks his nose and shit. I'm like, that all works for me. That's the mode that I feel like this movie should be operating on for more of the runtime. And then we kind of forget that he's fucking disgusting and horrible for like the entire third act of this movie. And that's like kind of a problem for me. Because it's like, it's how we set it up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We're introduced to Lord Farquaad.
Yes.
Played by John Lithgow. Who
I think by John Lithgow, which I forgot. The Podmaster immediately was like, oh yeah, Lithgow. And I was like, wait.
I knew who John Lithgow was as a kid, which feels weird.
Yeah.
I think I just occasionally watched Third Rock from the Sun
I
as a
also
kid.
watched Third Rock from the Sun.
I couldn't tell you a dick about that show now.
Yeah.
But like,
All I know is Joseph Gordon-Levitt is an alien. They might all be aliens,
they might. I don't know. I thought just Lithgow was.
or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe only Lithgow's the alien. There's aliens, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and John Lithgow are in it.
Yeah,
This weekend confirmed.
I caught the tail end of a lot of 90s sitcoms. So like Boy Meets World and Full House. I
Yeah.
watched as a kid, but I don't have any real attachment to them.
Right.
I think Lithgow's great. He's in the movie a lot less than I remember. Like, we cut back to Farquaad for a couple of jokes here and there,
Yeah.
but he's really not in this thing. But I do love that we're introduced to him torturing the gingerbread man.
And his performance is good. I
Yeah.
think, with the potential exception, apologies to Cameron Diaz, of Cameron Diaz. For me, I think the performances in this movie are all pretty, the voice performances are all pretty good.
Yeah.
I like Cameron Diaz as an actress. She kind of does nothing for me in this movie.
She doesn't do much for me
Yeah.
in this movie either, but I've also never been a huge fan of her as an actress.
Yeah.
But of the main voice cast, she's clearly the weak one out, I think.
Right. But yeah, Lithgow's great.
Yeah.
And this gingerbread man sequence, I feel two ways about, much like the rest of this movie, because the fact that he is torturing this sentient gingerbread man with his own legs, he has snapped off this guy's legs and is like waggling them in front of him. That's funny and fucked up on like a PG friendly level, right? But if you think about it, you're like, that's horrific and like fucking heinous.
Gumdrop buttons.
And that's all fucking fine and dandy. And then they do the Muffin Man gag.
Oh, the Muffin Man gag's good.
I fucking hate the Muffin Man gag. I fucking hate it because I'm like, I know the poem. Are you just going to say, yes, you are? Okay. Is it just going to be the next line of that? Yep. Okay. That's the whole joke. And it goes on for long enough that I start getting enraged at
the Muffin
movie.
Man poem's not that long.
No, they do it. They just stretch it out longer than they need to. Like, I get the joke by the time the gingerbread man is done saying the first line, and then they do 5 more lines of the poem. And I'm like, I get it.
As someone who's been watching a lot of Family Guy compilations recently,
Yeah.
trust me, they do not drag it out longer than they need to.
Yeah.
They get almost to that point,
Yeah.
and that's when it comes back around and it's funny again. It doesn't do the Family Guy thing, which Family Guy sometimes does and is often known for doing,
Right.
where they drag it on way too long.
Like, so long that it's like, it hasn't been funny for a while.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess there is, yes, technically worse executions
How do you feel
of this
about
joke that exist.
How do you feel about the short jokes?
The short jokes are funny.
I think the short jokes consistently land for me.
The one that is the funniest to me is when he's on his horse and he's in a regular sized suit of armor, and then he has a guy who lifts him out of his suit of armor that's on the horse and puts him down on the ground, and he's tiny. That is actually legitimately very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The short jokes usually work for me. It does seem like the movie sometimes tries to have its cake and eat it too, about whether the joke is about him being short or him having a tiny penis. And I'm like, pick one.
I feel like the tiny penis jokes only come up a couple of times.
Yeah, but the big one that I'm thinking of is the one where Shrek and Donkey are talking to Fiona, and she's like, what's Farquaad like? And they make a bunch of short jokes. And it sort of seems like they're talking about his height, but then it also kind of seems like they're talking about his penis. And because it's like not very clear which thing the joke is supposed to be about, kind of neither work as well for me. In that bit specifically.
Okay. I remember that, and I sort of felt that too.
Yeah.
I think the compensating for something, I remember you like saying,
That's clearly a penis joke.
that's definitely a penis joke, and I
Yeah.
think they do that when they see the building, and then they do it at the end of the movie. I think that's
Okay,
the
yeah.
only time that they do it.
Okay, maybe
But
maybe
we
it's
are
only the
making
twice, but
Yeah.
But the second time I was basically like, that's just the same joke again.
Yeah.
You know, they basically repeat the same thing. It's like, oh, because Shrek's like, oh, you think he's compensating for something? And then at the end of the movie, it's like Donkey and Fiona are looking at it, and Donkey's like, Shrek thinks he's compensating for something. And it's like, yeah, I know. I heard him fucking say that. Like, what's the new spin on this joke?
Anyway, yeah, Farquaad has the magic mirror, and the magic mirror basically plays the Bachelorette
Yeah.
game, which I always thought was funny, and I still thought it was funny this time.
The thing that I thought was funny about it this time is that the background looks like SpongeBob wallpaper. It's like got like the SpongeBob-esque color scheme and like the little flowers and shit on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the jokes that I really laughed at in this movie is Farquaad's like main heavy or whatever in like the executioner mask,
Yeah.
punching the little mirror to
Okay.
threaten the magic mirror.
I'm glad you said that one because that one also I thought was funny. The three, my lord, which is the oft quoted joke from this scene.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, again, it was funnier when Monty Python did it. It's so much funnier. The 1, 2, 5 is so much funnier. But yes, him punching the mirror to threaten the magic mirror, that I was surprised by how funny I found that. I was like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Actually, the one needle drop that might not work for me in this movie is the Pina Colada song.
Yeah.
Especially
Especially because it happens after he straight up says she
Y-
likes pina coladas and getting caught in
Yeah.
the rain. It just feels like a hat on a hat.
yeah, it's like we're just doing a reference at this point,
Right.
and we're not doing anything creative with it.
Yeah.
But this was also probably the first time I heard the Pina Colada song.
I think it was probably the first time I ever heard the pina colada song too.
Yeah.
Uh,
So he picks
he picks
Fiona.
Fiona.
She's in a castle. There's a dragon.
Yes. And Shrek and Donkey show up at fucking Farquaad's castle.
Duloc.
Duloc. Yeah. And okay. I've been talking shit about this movie. I will continue talking shit about this movie. I do want to say, to this movie's credit, and in no uncertain terms, the guy in the giant Farquaad mask, the big Farquaad mascot, who runs away through the little like rope line dividers, and then fucking tries to go under the turnstile and gets stuck and shit.
Yeah.
Funny as hell.
Oh yeah, it's a knockout.
That gag, I was like, okay, this is what this whole movie should be. This whole movie should be shit like this, which feels, again, very Mel Brooks. It feels extremely Mel Brooks. And I'm like, yeah, just give me more of this type of thing where Shrek and Donkey wander into a situation with some weird guy in this fairy tale world, and they like do a little bit of a visual gag and have some banter about it. And then the scene ends and we move on to the next thing, which is also what The Princess Bride is. It's basically like set piece with a bunch of jokes, move on, set piece with a bunch of jokes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and this is when the movie was peaking for me,
Yeah.
was in this Duloc sequence. Because then they walk into Duloc after they see this fucking mascot dude. And it's very eerie. This is where the emptiness of the backgrounds, just the complete digital desolation of the space that these characters are inhabiting, this is where it works. Because the whole thing with Duloc is like Farquaad wants to keep everything pristine and perfect, right? And so it's like good that it all looks uniform and totally empty and void of anything. And then they like go up and do the little welcome animatronic. And like that's also fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, the Duloc sequence I remember being one of the highlights of this movie as a kid, mostly because of the Duloc song and the all-timer great joke, please keep off of the grass, shine your shoes, wipe your face.
The Podmaster also really likes that joke. For me, it's a solid like 7.5 out of 10, but still a good joke.
Yeah.
A good joke. Yeah.
As a kid, it was a 10 out of 10 for
Yes,
sure.
I agree. I look back fondly on that joke.
Yeah.
From the first time I saw this.
But I think the design of Duloc, and it's this weird, like, dystopian, super pristine castle that's also sort of Disneyland.
Yeah, it's very brutalist.
so
it is
creative.
very Disneyland. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the bet with the Duloc mascot running through the line killed for me this time.
Yeah, I want to give this movie credit where credit is due. I was laughing quite hard at
Yeah.
It's very funny.
And then so everyone's at this tournament. Lord Farquaad's hosting a tournament to determine who the knight is that will go and rescue Fiona. Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Yeah, and then fucking Shrek busts in
Yeah.
and is like, "Hey, get these fucking prisoners of war out my damn swamp!" And Farquaad's like, what the fuck?
And then they all fight.
Sees the ogre, and they fight.
And Bad Reputation plays.
And again, like, I agree with you that needle drop works.
Yeah,
I think it's a good needle. That's a good needle drop.
I like when he turns on the spigot of the ale and starts spraying everyone, and then we just start doing wrestling movies.
Him doing
wrestling moves.
Him doing like the double WWE thing. There were two conflicting thoughts happening in my brain at the same time. One of them was, this is more like Mel Brooks-esque shenanigans that I enjoy in this movie. And then the other one was like, yeah, but also, this existing in this movie is how we eventually get the Just Dance sequence in the Emoji Movie. I feel like
you're like Dr. Manhattan seeing the past and the future at the same point.
Right. That is how I felt watching this movie.
Kwisatz Haderach.
Where I was like, I can see where this came from, and I like what it's emulating here, but look where it leads. Look down the dark path.
I did think like the wrestling bit. It's weird that the wrestling bit is literally half of this action scene.
Yeah.
Like
it goes on for a while.
Yeah. Like we do a couple wrestling moves. I think if we did a couple and then we moved on to a different gag, it would probably be better. But he knocks out like 5 or 6 guys with wrestling moves.
Yeah.
Although I do like the lady going, "Give him the chair!" and he hits him with a wooden chair. I also like Donkey knocking one of the guys out.
Yeah, with a kick to the head, which leads me to our next bit of Podmaster commentary on this film, which is, how many people do you think Shrek just killed? Because some of these wrestling moves that he is doing look fatal. Not least of which is when fucking Shrek puts his gooch in this dude's face and then slams him to the ground with his nuts. I'm pretty sure the smell of ogre taint alone would end your life. We've seen how he lives. That shit's gonna you're never getting that.
That man's got nuts like kettleballs. Just crush a man's head like a melon.
That guy's gonna be in a scent-induced coma for the next 30 years. Yeah.
Shrek wins.
He wins.
And
Lord Farquaad's like, wait, instead of shooting him with bows, let's send this guy to go get the princess because clearly he's better than all my knights.
Yeah.
And so they send Shrek to go get Fiona from the castle.
Shrek just wants the swamp back.
Yeah. And then is this where ogres are like onions?
Ogres have layers, onions have layers.
So an often memed bit of this movie, the whole ogres have layers, ogres are like onions, etc., etc. Seeing this scene play out in action, I had 2 thoughts. One, oh no, this is where the movie is about to start getting bad, isn't it? Right? Because this is where we start trying to make the audience give a shit about Shrek's feelings, which I think is a mistake in this movie. Number 2, wow, this is an ugly scene to look at, because they are like, it's Shrek and Donkey, who are admittedly well animated, in front of a totally cloudless, just one color monotone blue sky, right? And then a row of like bright yellow sunflowers that have nothing interesting going on design wise. And it just like holds on the same angle of them for shot reverse shot throughout this entire scene that's probably like 2 minutes or so long.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was watching it, I was like, this is giving me fucking End of Phantom Menace, Battle of Naboo eye fatigue, where looking at this is hurting my retinas, is how I was feeling watching this moment of this film.
Don't say that too loud. George might hear you.
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh shit. Gotta be careful.
Did I just hear some scuttling in the walls?
Yeah. Hopefully it's just rats.
Yeah, I mean, I will agree. I don't think this scene is visually one of the best points of the movie.
The onion also just looks weird.
Yeah, that was one thing. I was like, the onion looks a little weird. How does the metaphor work for you as like a lesson that we're teaching kids? Because like, I was watching it, and I don't know if I was just an idiot as a kid, but I got it, and I know this was like an often memed thing and a thing that like we quoted to each other as kids.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was a pretty simple and like clean and kind of elegant way of teaching this lesson.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I feel sort of two ways about it. One way is like, I feel like the target demo for this movie is kids who are like 9 to 12, right? Because it's like you're a little older, so you get some of the like bad language jokes, and you might even get a penis joke or two.
Yeah.
You think all the shitting and farting stuff is funny, right? And for that age demographic, I kind of feel like Ogres Have Layers, Onions Have Layers is maybe a little simplistic, and we could go a little bit deeper with it, and the movie kind of doesn't. Other than it's like, oh, he's ugly and tells everybody he wants to be left alone, but he has feelings too, right? That's basically all the depth there is to it. I feel like we could go a little deeper if that's the age demo, because Ogres Have Layers, Onions Have Layers feels like more like 6-year-old shit to me.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's bad. It's probably the piece of the whole like, let's try and make the audience give a shit about these characters that works best for me, is maybe the onion metaphor stuff. The thing that I don't care about is Fiona and Shrek's relationship at all. But yeah, like that stuff, it's fine, I think.
Yeah, I think it works pretty well, but I was also thinking like I think we hammer home this theme maybe a few too many times in a few too many places. And I think where it really works is the scene between Donkey and Shrek. Looking up at the stars and looking up at the moon.
Yeah.
And Shrek's talking about how he just wants to be left alone and everyone treats him like shit. But also the reason to bring up this scene is when Donkey starts talking about parfaits having layers. I didn't know what a parfait was.
Yeah.
So I asked my parents what a parfait was, and then we had yogurt parfaits for breakfast, like not every day, but like once a week as like a before school treat. And I haven't had parfaits since.
Yeah. Because you were just obsessed with parfaits.
Because they're just
Shrek.
Parfaits might be the most delicious thing on the whole damn planet.
The Yoplait Corporation was like, hell yes. We got the Shrek bump. Yeah. They go to a castle and there's a river of lava.
I'm on my Wii.
I'm on my Wii. Yes, this is where we're on our Wii.
Yeah, they go to the castle.
You know what? I will always take I'm on my way over.
Yeah.
In a similar circumstance.
I would walk 500 miles.
No, another Proclaimer song. But in a similar movie montage circumstance is the "Send me on my way, send me on the highway, on the way." You know the song I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They use it in Ice Age. On my way.
On my way. Yeah, I know.
Send me on my way. That song blows. I'm on my way by the Proclaimers.
I completely forgot that song existed until you just mentioned that.
Yeah, it is like sort of similarly used in Ice Age. And I think the "Send me on my way," that one blows.
I'll probably take I would take "I'm on my way" over like
I'm on my way.
The Rascal Flatts "Life is a Highway."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Of the three that we just mentioned, Rascal Flatts "Life is a Highway" is third to me by a large margin. I don't like that "On my way"
We'll have to talk about that when we do Cars.
Yeah.
Do you know that my dad loves Cars? He loves the first Cars movie.
That's fascinating.
Because
I consider that one of the weakest Pixar films.
I think a lot of people would agree with you.
Yeah.
He's big into local history.
Yeah.
And made model trains and shit like that. So he was used to like modeling places that he lived at, or locations nearby and old buildings and shit like that. Very into history as like an armchair historian. And when he moved up here, he became very invested in Route 66
yeah, that makes
history, and was actually on like the Route 66 Historic Preservation Board.
Oh, cool.
And worked to like keep some of these locations still like restored and open. So because of the Route 66 connection,
that makes sense why your dad likes Cars.
He loves Cars.
Yeah, it makes sense for your dad to love Cars given that knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes. Much like the film Cars, we are coming to you live from Route 66. Anyway. There's the river of lava. There's a bridge.
River lava.
Shrek attempts to murder Donkey here. When he's like swaying the bridge above the river of lava, I was like, is he just straight up trying to kill this little horse? Because I don't disagree. Maybe it is the part of the movie where Donkey should eat shit in a river of lava, like Gollum.
And then we run into the world's most fuckable dragon.
We've been teasing your feelings on this dragon since the Prince of Egypt episode. Talk to me about the dragon in Shrek, David.
Man. I'd fuck this dragon till the whole castle stank. Also, is the dragon trying to rape Donkey?
Okay.
Because Donkey's like, no. He says no multiple times.
And in ways that make it unambiguously sexual assault on the dragon's part. Because he straight up says multiple times, like, I do not give permission for you to touch me like that. This is an unwanted touch. He's saying shit like that the whole scene. And I'm like, we're just witnessing this donkey be molested. Like, and I guess it's fine because he's an animated donkey voiced by Eddie Murphy. And it's a sexy dragon voiced by no one because it doesn't speak. But it is weird. The energy of that scene is weird.
Yes.
Because it's like, I don't necessarily know that I'm comfortable watching fucking Eddie Murphy donkey get groped.
And he's like wrapped up in her tail or something.
Yeah.
Like an anaconda.
It's like, I do not give you permission to touch me there. And it's like, this dragon needs to learn something about consent. Which is, I guess, what he's doing. He's trying to educate her about consent. Which I suppose is a fire-breathing dragon who lives in a castle surrounded by a river of lava. You might be unfamiliar with the idea of consent.
Yeah.
Especially if she is not sentient. Which is a question the movie doesn't answer. She can't speak, and I'm like,
but she does understand him.
Yes.
Because I think she starts coming on to him after he starts
that's
complimenting
her. You're right. Yeah, because the part of this movie I was basically like, is he a sentient talking animal and she's just a regular animal? And this is the equivalent of bestiality, is a thing I was wondering for parts of this movie. I know they're both animals, but he's like, you know.
Yeah. Well, in the sequels, they definitely have bred together.
Yeah.
Then they've produced little dragon donkey spawn.
It was just
hybrids.
In this movie, it was giving me a little bit Charlton Heston and Nova energy from fucking Planet of the Apes. Where it's like, does she know what's happening? But it was sort of reversed.
Yeah.
Right? Where she was the sexual aggressor, as we said. Yeah.
Speaking of fuckable characters, we got to cross the other one off the list. How do you feel about Fiona in this?
So, as I've previously said, the human model sort of gives me Uncanny Valley vibes, the same way that a lot of the human models in this movie do. So I don't love looking at human Fiona. I think Shrekified Fiona, Ogre Fiona, right? First of all, the character is more pleasant to look at for me because since it's more designed and cartoony, it doesn't give me the same Uncanny Valley vibes. Also, like, that's sort of the character in this movie that I think is hot.
Okay.
Is Ogre Fiona.
Yeah.
Ogre Fiona, I was sort of like, all right.
And I think
that's the only character I even remotely had that feeling about in this movie. The dragon thing I don't get that at all. I mean, I know it has big hips or whatever, but like...
We get that low angle shot of her chasing Donkey, and those hips are just swinging.
That dragon does have a fucking dumper.
She's dragging a wagon back there. Oh my god. I think the perverts of the world would agree with you about Fiona.
Yeah.
I've never had the Fiona thing. I always was like, if there's a version of Fiona that I think is hot, it's the human version.
The regular Cameron Diaz version.
I was never into the ogre version, but I can see why.
The ogre version thing, I'm just kind of like, because everybody's like, oh, like, you know, when she turns into an ogre, everyone reacts as if she's so hideous. But like, her body type is actually still quite feminine.
Yeah.
And quite, you know, I'm
thick?
as a man, I was like, well, she's not even that thick. I was kind of looking at her and I was like, No, yeah, that just kind of looks like a regular
Yeah.
human body. You know, like Shrek he's got like a big old gut and tiny legs and shit. But her proportions, I was looking at and I was like, I don't know, she just kind of looks like a human lady now, whereas before she looked like a stick,
You know what?
like a rod.
You know what unnerves me about Shrek?
Huh?
The dude has huge hands.
Yeah, his hands are alarmingly large.
His hands are like the size of a normal person's head.
There is a funny visual in this movie where he puts his whole hand on Donkey's face to shut him up. And his like entire hand just encompasses the entirety of Donkey's like pretty large face.
Yeah.
And it like, yeah, it's one of those moments where you're just like, his hands are so fucking big. And then I imagine if he just squeezed, he could probably crush Donkey's whole head.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is making me viscerally uncomfortable.
Yeah. Which he talks a lot about like cutting people's spleens open and pulling out their eyeballs and shit. I kind of wish that we got like R-rated, like fully lean into just the subversive fairy tale fucking satire thing and just do like a for adults Shrek thing where we do see him like crush people's heads with those giant hands and like cut open their spleens and drink it in his martini or whatever.
I wonder if he's into breath play with those big hands.
Well, if he is, it's a good thing Fiona ends up as an ogre, because as a human, she wouldn't have been able to take that.
Yeah.
That we would have been one night in the bedroom and been like, oh, now I got to look for a new wife because that one is deceased.
Splattered her brains all over the wall.
Yes.
Her head popped off like the
Maybe that's
cap on a tube.
Maybe that's what that witch meant by love's true form.
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna need a body that can get railed by an ogre. You're not gonna be able to handle it in your princess body. You ever seen an ogre's dick? You know what they're packing? It's gonna be coming out your esophagus.
Yeah, I'm sure a few deviant artists had the same idea.
Oh, with this film, there's no question. There's literally, I mean, you've seen the Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life 4chan post, correct? Yeah,
yes.
People have thought about every single character in this movie, fucking every single other character in this movie. You want to see Pinocchio's nose go through fucking Donkey's butthole and come out of his mouth? Someone has committed that.
I want to see the
to ink and put it on the internet.
I want to see the three blind mice gangbang the gingerbread man.
Yeah, are the three blind mice kind of ableist?
Kinda.
Are those jokes kind of ableist?
Yeah, we're kind of. I mean, we're taking the low road with a lot of these jokes and just going for the easy joke with the fairy tale characters.
Yeah. Because the whole joke with the three blind mice is they can't see.
Yeah.
And it's like, presumably they haven't been able to see for a
I
while,
don't
and
know.
maybe they can navigate a little bit better.
I mean, like,
instead of stumbling around.
I don't want to justify it, but also, could you think of a second kind of joke for three blind mice?
You know what? Right off the top of my head, no, I can't. But I am also not asking people to hire me as a writer in Hollywood. So that's my defense for that.
That's true. Yeah.
I've never presumed to be a film writer. Yeah, anyway. Yes, every possible iteration of fucking in this movie exists on the internet.
Shrek rescues Fiona.
Yes.
He's got like a knight. He's got armor on, so she doesn't realize that he's giant and green, which somehow, I don't know how she doesn't notice that.
The dragon gets her sub collar so that Donkey can dom her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets the chandelier around her neck. Yeah, and Fiona's whole thing is basically like, well, now I have to marry you because you saved me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how fairy tales work. Get it? This is a parody of fairy tale movies.
Is by that same token of like, is the three blind mice jokes ableist?
Yeah.
Is Shrek's like dismissal of Fiona in this movie read as a little misogynistic?
Yeah,
I'm thinking of like when he like throws her over his shoulder.
Right. I think this movie tries to be like have like a female empowerment streak to it in a way that a movie from 2001 tried that, right? Which is basically like, Fiona's capable. We see her kicking ass later in the movie. Like, she kicks fucking Robin Hood's ass. And then it's also like the thing of like, oh, she's like a pretty princess, but she's also like got the hideous ogres thing. And like, those are equally valid. And she's not more worthy of love as one of those things than as the other thing. Right? I think all of that is like this movie's attempt at being like female empowerment, yeah, right? But then like what we actually see in other parts of the movie sort of undercuts it. One is the thing where Shrek is just like, shut the fuck up, I'm throwing you over my shoulder and walking away, which is sort of a funny joke, but also like,
I mean, it's sort of funny, and if I can justify it because Shrek's an angry ogre who doesn't like anyone,
right.
But some of it was like, is this a little too much?
The thing for me that I was like a little like, I wonder if a movie that came out 20 years later would handle it this way, is the thing where like one of the ways that we see her being like capable and like worthy of Shrek's like respect is like being a homemaker and being like, she insists that they have somewhere to camp, but then she's like, I'm gonna make it all nice, and we see her like putting together their little whatever and then like cooking them eggs for breakfast. It's like, I'm going to shelter and feed you because that's what women do, right? And that's like what kind of gets Shrek to be like, maybe she's not so bad. And I'm like, I don't know about that movie from 2001. You know,
sort of
like some of it
I
is
feel
like,
I feel like more of it is when the montage of Fiona matching his freak.
Yeah.
To use a parlance
there
of
is
the times.
There is that, right?
Where she's one of the guys. She burps and farts and drinks beer and watches football, which again could be its own. You know,
right?
You could read that.
It's the whole cool
way.
girl thing,
yeah,
which is also problematic in its own way.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, we're
not experts.
No, we're just two guys who look like Shrek.
Yeah, we're not going to tear apart Shrek for being somewhat misogynistic.
No, I think there are way bigger problems with this movie than its gender politics. I think if you're gonna critique something about Shrek, its treatment of women should be very, very low on the list. I don't think it's a big offender. Anyway, yeah. So
the escape. I like the escape sequence.
Yeah.
I like when they're riding down like a stone pillar or something, and Shrek gets hit in the nuts.
Yeah. Again, like nut shots in this movie, yes, please.
And even when he like puts the sword in the middle of the chains, to like tie up the dragon, I thought that was like, I don't know, creative and fun. And like the thing with this movie is like, the concept of this movie as you know, making a fairy tale monster the protagonist of a typical stereotypical fairy tale adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that works, and some of the action stuff in this where we see Shrek sort of being heroic, and getting away from the dragon, it worked for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this sequence is okay. I think the animation of the action sequence is at its best in this movie. Like, the best animated action sequence is this Cassel action sequence with the dragon. I think like the action sequence at the end, and then also the fucking Fiona kicking Robin Hood's ass, like both of those looked less good to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think this one looks good, so there's that. I also like the thing where he puts the sword through all the chains and tangles up the dragon. It's also very funny that we're doing this 2 weeks after we did the Emoji Movie, where the fucking robot that's made of a bunch of like pixels gets tangled up by its own arms in the same way. And obviously the Emoji Movie came out way later, but it is just still, it's funny to see like, oh, shitty, low effort animated family films are still sort of like aping this same climactic thing.
You know, when I walked into your house this morning to record this, or this afternoon, to record this episode, I don't know what's
whatever
going
time
on.
of day it is.
we turn on the microphones and we just talk for 2 hours, and I don't know what happens.
We both go into a fugue state.
We blank out.
Sometimes it's 2 weeks later.
Yeah. I didn't expect there would be this many comparisons to the Emoji Movie.
It's less because I think this movie is like the Emoji Movie, because I think I've already said this, but let me just reiterate. This movie's way better than the Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
Shrek is way better than the Emoji Movie. The Emoji Movie is orders of magnitude worse.
It's also better than Reagan.
I will take your word on that, and I believe you. It sounds better. But I do think, again, this movie lays the foundation for how to make a lazy, lowest common denominator children's animation film. even though I don't necessarily think that's what Shrek is. I think Shrek is higher than the lowest common denominator, but I think it gives you the blueprint for how to do it.
Yeah, I think it is like we are the alternative to Disney Pixar.
Right. So if you want to make something cheap that a million kids will come see, here you go. Here's the roadmap.
And now DreamWorks and Sony Pictures and Illumination and all these other animation studios are now the alternative to Disney Pixar.
And to me, everything that they're doing, it has roots right here. Mm-hmm. You know, it's basically just like they look at that as like the text, right? And just be like, okay, which thing from Shrek will we be pulling from? Is it the we're making fun of some pre-established fictional universe? Is it the thing where our protagonist is a grumpy curmudgeon who learns to love? Is it the villain getting tangled up in a bunch of his own shit? You know, like it's all here. Anyway.
Now we have to inject some emotion into this movie.
Yeah.
They stop to camp. Fiona goes into the cave because she's an ogre.
Yeah.
I do like the joke when Shrek threatens to roll the stone over the cave entrance, and then Shrek and Donkey. Jesus Christ.
Nick Cave and the Donkey Seeds.
There's a Nick Cave needle drop in Shrek 2, I think.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. Wow.
These soundtracks are crazy.
Yeah, they are.
But anyway.
Counting Crows in the second one too. I like that one.
Yeah. So Shrek and Donkey
So
do
she
the
said, "What's
scene...
the problem, baby?" Sorry.
They do the scene from The Lion King where Timon and Pumbaa look at the stars.
See, I like this.
Yeah.
Because
it's fine.
It's fine. I mean, it's a quieter moment in this movie where we're not doing 10 jokes in the span of a minute. But like it adds some more to Shrek and shows that there's like ogre culture and history and myth.
Right.
Without like going into it too much.
Yeah.
Where he's pointing out the different constellations. And then he talks about how he's like he wants to be left alone. People judge them before they get to know him. I think this thematically all works really well because it is not just about like it is about the expectations that society has of you and that other people put on you. And it's more than just like a simple just be yourself kind of message, which is here too.
Right.
But I think this just gives the movie a little bit more of a stronger message for kids.
Yeah.
And then also applying that theme to Fiona too, where she has this societal expectation of being a prim and proper pretty princess, and in a way that's what she wants.
Yeah.
When in reality she is much more like Shrek than she would maybe care to admit.
Right. I get what you're saying. I do think you are right that the complexity of kind of the emotional message here is above what you would get in like, you know, a Saturday morning cartoon. And I think it's below what you would get in like a Pixar movie. It's occupying some middle space, and I don't know if it totally works for me as well as it does for you. I almost wish that they would pick one. I think
you're right. I think it does occupy a middle space. I just think it's closer to a Pixar movie than it is to a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, if you think it's like dead in the middle, I think it's like maybe slightly to the right, slightly over to like the
Pixar side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't agree on that, but like we have established our disconnect.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's like a little too trite for me to be putting it anywhere close to the like Monsters Inc. Territory.
Sure.
You know, because Monsters Inc. to me, I'm like, that movie has so much going on. It's about parenthood. It's about life in the workforce. It's about, you know, and it communicates all of those things to children very effectively, right? Whereas this movie is basically be yourself on steroids. to me. Not be yourself on steroids.
No, that's pumping iron.
I wish I could be myself on steroids.
That's pumping iron.
Yes.
Justice.
A movie that we will eventually talk about. Probably the first documentary we'll talk about, but we'll see.
And I also just this might be crazy, but like the shots of Patrick and Donkey. SpongeBob. What's wrong with me?
I don't know, but I love the idea that
I
his
think
name's
this-
actually Patrick. You know when I was saying that he was Kaiser Sozeing the name Shrek? he was like, Shrek, yeah. But his actual name's Patrick the entire time.
Okay. I think this is unofficially one of those kill me with a brick episodes. The shots of Shrek and Donkey looking up at the stars, I was like, very nicely framed. Very beautiful shot in this movie. Them silhouetted against the giant, unrealistic moon. Very nice looking shot.
Yep, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I think there are rare moments for me where this movie looks quite good, and I think that's one of them. Yeah.
And I do want to concede, I think you are right. I think there are parts of this movie that are just maybe a little bit too barren and sterile visually.
Yeah.
But I maybe chalk that up more to like a matter of where animation was at the time and not like an artistic direction.
Yeah, I guess so. But like, you watch Monsters Inc. that came out the same year, and I know it's Pixar, and it's hard to compare DreamWorks that
And they're
had way
build-
fewer resources.
They are
and-
building a whole world in that movie that
That's-
is completely different. Where this is like, oh, we're gonna do fairy tales, so we got forests and we got castles.
Right. Yeah. No, that's
I don't
true.
know.
I don't know. It's just like a lot of the locations. I'm like, even the background vegetation seems so sparse, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it's they did do this for a lot less money than Pixar spent on
Yeah.
Monsters Inc. You know what I do hate? I'm gonna take us on a very brief sidebar for this because I do want to gripe about this for a second. A pet peeve of mine in movies and television is fake Shakespearean English that doesn't actually consist of real Shakespearean
yeah.
English words.
Yeah.
And the way Fiona's talking for the early part of this movie when she's still trying to do the Disney princess thing, I get that it's a joke, but it's such a lazy and annoying and overplayed joke to just do Shakespearean sounding words that aren't real Shakespearean sounding words like beeth. Guess what, motherfuck? You can read all of Shakespeare's plays. Beeth never shows up once. Nobody has ever said beeth. That's not a fucking word. And I get that that's the joke.
Okay,
But it's lazy and annoying and stupid, and I hate it.
But the only people who have read all of Shakespeare's plays are fucking nerds.
I haven't
Justus.
read all of them, to be fair.
I
So who knows? Maybe beeth is in one of those ones
Beeth.
like fucking Troilus and Cressida that I haven't read. But Cameron Diaz says beeth in that movie, and I was
Yeah.
like, that's fucking dumb as hell.
it was like I recognized it. And I was like, okay, this doesn't really work for me. But I
Yeah.
don't think they overdid it to the point where I was
No,
like
It
foaming at the mouth.
She's doing it for like about 4 to 6 minutes, and
Yeah.
then she kind of stops. But for those 4 to 6 minutes, I was like, please fucking quit doing this. I hate it so much. In much the same way that like the second act of this movie and a little bit into the third is packed with I shouldn't just accuse the second and third act of this, because actually thinking back on it, it's the entire runtime. This movie is packed with references to other movies that kids straight up will not get. Shrek does a "Are you talking to me?" right at one point. There's the fucking "That'll do, donkey, that'll do."
Mhm.
There's so much shit like that in this movie. And by the time we got to, I think it's "That'll do, donkey" at the castle, I literally sat up bolt upright on the couch and yelled at the TV, "Stop fucking doing that." Because I was so mad that this movie kept just doing quotes from other movies. Other movies that aren't like fairy tale movies. Like they weren't like doing Princess Bride quotes. That would be something, because you're like exploring a similar world here. That would be a reference to a thing that is sort of spiritually similar. But it's like, no, we're just gonna fucking quote, like Taxi Driver or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, what, for who?
I don't think it's that bad. I think you're overreacting to it.
Maybe.
I'm sure it gets worse in the sequels.
Yeah, probably.
I feel like those sequels really lean into the pop culture references as a substitute for humor more than this one does.
Yeah.
Cause like that'll do, donkey. Like that was a quote that we said, and we didn't necessarily know where it was from.
Yeah.
But it worked in the context of the film. I feel like, "Are you talking to me?" Yeah, that's Taxi Driver, but it's also, I don't know. It's been referenced so many times that I feel like it's so far removed from Taxi Driver.
But
that
isn't
it's a
the fact
reference.
that it's been referenced so many times in other things even more egregious
I mean-
because every time a movie does it, it just gets lazier and lazier.
But
because every other movie has done it.
But when another movie does it, is the first thing that you think of Taxi is like, oh, they're doing Taxi Driver?
I mean, I think, yes, they're doing the quote from Taxi Driver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily think that.
Okay.
If it was like, I Am Your Father, it's like, okay, they're doing Star Wars.
Right.
But I feel like that's, are you talking to me is like far enough removed from Taxi Driver for me personally.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah.
So we're tomato,
Anyway.
tomato.
Yes. And maybe I'm nitpicking, but I did want to gripe about that. And we
I
can
like
move on.
I like the scene where Lord Farquaad is gooting to pictures of Fiona.
Yes. There's
He's
like an
jerking his dick.
8-second cutaway gag where Lord Farquaad has clearly been just straight jorking it. Yeah, that made me laugh.
Yeah,
That was funny. John Lithgow basically being like, play the video again, and then looking under the blanket at his own dick to see if he was ready for round 2.
You want to know what the funniest part of this movie was for me?
Huh.
The biggest laugh that this movie got for me
What?
is when Fiona's making eggs because she did the Disney
She-
princess thing and she blows up a bird.
Murders a bird with her voice, yes.
And she gets up and she's like, "We have a big day ahead of us," and she's all chipper. The look that Shrek gives to Donkey fucking murdered me.
Is it the one that's like in all those memes where he's like,
It is, yeah. It is a meme,
yeah.
but I forgot about it.
He looks like a death metal bass player.
I forgot
He's
like
doing
the
stank
context
face.
of it. But him looking at Donkey like, really? I was like, that was so fucking funny.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I probably wouldn't have laughed at as a kid.
Yeah.
I think I caught more jokes this time that were either geared towards adults or just like not something that kids would necessarily laugh
Right.
at this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that one, I did a full on like laughing so hard I thought I was gonna pass out.
I do think that one is indicative of like a thing that I think is strong-ish in this movie, which is like some of the visual gags with the animation. I'm like, yeah, like, okay, you're doing something here.
Yeah.
It's not just the purgatory for the animators who were fired off of the Prince of Egypt.
Oh right.
Doing this out of obligation.
Right.
They're having some fun with it.
Right.
Yes, they called it getting Shrek.
Yes, I remember
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, Shrek is clearly the character that had the most animation work put into him.
Yeah.
And I think his facial animation is always creative.
Yes.
He's always making interesting faces.
Yes. I do think that as a character, as an animated character, Shrek is always kind of interesting and dynamic to look at. And I think that's a strength of this movie. That sets it apart from something like the Emoji Movie, where there is nothing interesting or dynamic to look at. Right. But yeah.
And then they run into Robin Hood. This
Who's
is
inexplicably French.
I
even though
forgot about that.
The biggest thing about Robin Hood's character always is that he's English.
I didn't realize this. He's voiced by Vincent Cassel,
What the hell?
who is like a very respected French actor.
What the hell?
Like
whatever.
we're gonna get the fucking guy from La Haine
Whatever.
to play Robin Hood and Shrek.
To play Robin Hood, the most English folklore figure of all time.
Yeah. This is the point of the movie where I think this movie is really well paced. It's
Yeah.
a nice brisk 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You get in and get out really quickly. As much as I was laughing during the Robin Hood sequence, I was like, we could maybe lose this.
This sequence probably aged the worst for me out of anything in the movie.
I think so too.
From the first time that I like saw it when I was like 9 and sort of liked it, before my kind of falling out with this movie, rewatching it, I was like, oh, this is the thing that I liked the most the first time I saw this, that I dislike the most by comparison now. Where I'm just like, okay, let's just fucking get this over with, you guys. I get it. He's Robin Hood. He's singing a little song. He's being all weird. He's French. Like, can we move on, please?
And then Fiona starts fighting them, and
there's
we
a
have to do a
Matrix
Matrix gag, which
'Cause-
we were doing that.
Yeah. Yep.
All
It was
over the place.
2001.
I do like that.
You guys seen The Matrix? You know about that movie?
I like that she like adjusts her hair in the middle of it and
Yeah.
then kicks them. That was fun. But yeah, at this point, I was like, all right, we could we could wrap this thing up, guys.
Even at 90 minutes, it does sort of feel like it's starting to drag around here for me. Although I will say, like, a thing that, even though I didn't enjoy the experience of watching this movie all that much, a thing that I will say about this movie is it does not feel like it is, like, poorly paced or that it drags much.
Mm-hmm.
I think it felt a little bit that way to me here around this, like, Robin Hood scene.
And also when he gets the arrow in the butt and, like, we're doing that,
right.
And then Donkey wanders off,
which is right around the same. It's actually the next thing.
It's after, because we're setting up the romantic montage,
right?
So we need to have a moment with Shrek and Fiona alone.
Yes.
It's kind of awkward and romantic to set up the romantic montage.
And the romantic moment is him having an arrow in his ass.
Yes,
he has been shot in the ass.
Was that how you and the Podmaster met? Was that your meet cute?
No, that would be very funny though. If I had been shot by an arrow in the ass and she had to pull it out for me.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't put it past you. Like, I feel like that's something that would happen to you.
I haven't been shot in the ass by an arrow. I haven't been shot by an arrow. I have shot arrows. My brothers and I had bows when we were growing up and would do target archery, but I never shot each other, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Podmaster and I met in journalism classes. So nowhere near as exciting as being shot bloodlessly in the ass with an arrow. They mentioned, like, Donkey's like, oh, there's blood and faints. And I'm like, where? Can I see it? Sorry, I thought this movie was edgy. But yeah, he gets shot in the ass with an arrow and it doesn't matter and he's totally fine.
Yeah. He probably just has, like, an insane, like, Wolverine healing factor.
Maybe it's just ogre powers.
Yeah.
He does at one point in the scene roll over onto the arrow, like because the arrow's in his ass, and he rolls onto his back at one point, and then Fiona's like landing on top of him, and Donkey walks up and it's like, oh no, it's so awkward. It looks like they're fucking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that arrow is just now underneath him, stuck in his ass, like against the ground, and I'm like, did that just fucking get it in there more? But anyway, it comes to nothing, and it's just kind of a one-off gag.
Yeah.
Blue flower, red thorns, etc.
Yeah.
Him saying that it would be easier if he wasn't colorblind.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's
a good one.
Yeah.
And then romantic montage of them doing gross stuff.
Set to My Beloved Monster by Eels. And I am, let it be known, a massive Mark Oliver Everett, aka Eels, fan. I fucking love Eels.
You're a big fan of Mark Eels?
I love Mark Eels. Mark Oliver Eels. Fucking love Eels. A big band for me. I've been into them for like a couple decades at this point. Really vibe with the musical stylings of Eels. Not the Eels. There is no the. It is only Eels. So I was happy to hear the song in this movie. I feel like Mark Oliver Everett is better than this movie is, but I was happy that he showed up and sang a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I don't have any opinions on eels.
Yeah, eels.
I actually, eels are a very underrated sea creature in my opinion.
Yes.
I feel like I love sharks.
Yeah.
Sharks get all the attention.
We're just for
whales.
clarity, we're talking about the animal eels now.
Yeah.
Not the band eels. Yeah.
Eels could they're fucking electric. Holy shit.
Yeah. Also, smoked eel is delicious. Have you ever eaten eel?
No.
Eel's good. It tastes good. Also, did you know, I don't know if this is a true fact or if I'm about to spit some pseudoscience horseshit, but like do your own Googling. I've heard that no scientist has ever observed eels breeding in the wild.
I may have heard that, I think.
I think I've heard they've never seen it happen.
Man.
Which is, they must just be very shy. They're just like, don't watch me fuck.
It sucks to
Why
be
are these people always trying to watch us fuck?
Man, imagine being that one scientist that's like, I really want to find out how the eels fuck. And he's just tortured by it.
Come on. Just checking all of these eel fucking monitors. With his dick in his hand. Being like, one of these days.
Setting up a dating profile on Eels Tinder.
A fake profile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. But the other eels are
he's trying to catfish some eels.
Okay. Aquatic jokes.
Yeah.
Marine life humor. Yeah, so Basically after the eels montage, we find out that because they have their romantic little thing at sundown,
Mhm.
and then Fiona's like, "Oh, sundown, I gotta go inside," and she goes inside, and then fucking Donkey gets up in the middle of the night and like comes in, and we find out that much like episode 2 of our podcast, this is a Lady Hawk-esque situation, but in this case it would be called Lady Ogre. Because she's a lady by day and an ogre by night.
I feel like I could. That's not the worst thing in the world. I feel like I could vibe with that.
Yeah,
if I had to transform at night into an ogre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, for whatever reason, I thought you were saying if you were in a relationship with someone who was in a Fiona situation, which to me, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it while watching it, and I was like, I actually kind of think not only would I be fine with it, I'd sort of be like super down, because I'd be like, well, then then it's basically just 2 physical bodies that I get to enjoy from this same woman that I love.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you've established yourself as a Fiona fucker.
Right. And it's like, well, if I want to bang you looking this way, I can wait until after sundown, and if I want to bang you looking that way, I can wait until the sun comes up. We could have some afternoon delight with the skinny redhead, and then you can bang the thick ogre lady at night, and it's not cheating. It's the same woman, right? And you just get to enjoy 2 different body types, and I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I was gonna say, like, if I had to turn into an ogre at night, I think I'd be down with that, because I don't have to do anything after the sun goes down.
That's
it's just,
true.
I'm making dinner and putting on movies and hanging out with my cats.
I love the idea. I love the idea.
Jerking off.
I love the idea that it's like, yeah, like I work from home all day and have my Zoom camera on, and I'm a human being, and then I like cook dinner and sit down on the couch, turn into an ogre, then I go to bed.
That's kind of what happens now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's the end of the day. I don't need to wear pants or a shirt.
For me to turn
Could crack
into an
open a
ogre.
beer and fart on the couch.
Yeah, maybe this movie's smarter than I'm giving it credit for. If that's actually the point that it's making. Anyway.
Yeah, Shrek overhears them talking and thinks that they're talking about him.
A nitpick of mine is that I do think this is done in a somewhat lazy way, because I feel like a lot of like entertainment for children, the third act crux of it is based on main characters misunderstanding each other, and the way it's done, and I don't think that's always bad. I think it can work.
I think it's been done worse. I don't think this is a particularly elegantly
I think it's quite lazy
version of it.
I think it's quite lazy, because it's basically Shrek walks up to the door right as she's being like, who could ever love such a hideous, disgusting beast? It clearly sounds like I am talking about someone who is not me right now. Hope that doesn't come back to bite me. It's so on the nose that I'm like, we should have figured out a smarter way for these characters to have a falling out.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
So they fight the next morning. Shrek goes back to his swamp. We get the Hallelujah montage. And okay, here's my thing with the Hallelujah montage.
Uh-huh.
I feel like this is just visually done really well, with some of the cross cutting and the crossfades between I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit, I guess, because he gives her to Farquaad. And we do another short joke with Farquaad.
Yeah.
But she's like in the castle, Shrek's at home, and cutting back between both of them, I thought it cinematically looks really good. Like, he's sitting on one end of his dining room table eating his disgusting meal for the night, and then Fiona sitting on the other end of like Farquaad's dining room table fades in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, stuff like that. I was just like, filmically, this is a really nice way to get across the theme to a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Without telling it to them,
Yeah, I don't disagree that it is like decent visual storytelling. The problem that I have, other than the needle drop, which I think sucks, the problem that I have here is narratively, this is all happening between the hours of like when they get up and Cameron Diaz goes with Farquaad.
Yeah.
And when the sun goes down. Like, this is one day, and it just seems like they try so hard, even with the visual storytelling, to be like, oh, can you believe the emotional turmoil that these characters in this movie about butts and farts are going through, right? And it's like, it's one fucking day. Like, it's an afternoon. Like, fuck off is sort of how I was feeling. Because I was like, like when I have fought with my significant other, usually I'm not even cooled off by then. usually it takes me a solid 12 hours to reset, right? But if I was Fiona and Shrek came in during that wedding, I'd be like, no, I'm still mad at you. Fuck you. I haven't had enough time to cool off yet. I don't know. It just feels so like rushed to me, where it's like, well, we gotta end the movie before sundown, so like let's give them a little sad montage.
Yeah, it does
to cover the 2 hours of them being sad.
Maybe, I don't know, have you ever put on Hallelujah during your cool down periods?
No,
maybe that would help.
Not. Maybe it's just it crams it all into the 2-minute runtime of the song. Yeah. I don't know.
Donkey shows up and he's like, you fucking idiot, she wasn't talking about you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, again, like, I think Eddie Murphy's performance here and everything that Donkey's saying about, like, being treated like shit by Shrek.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I think
which is very true. Shrek is a huge asshole to Donkey in this movie.
I think it works enough that I kind of feel bad for Donkey.
Yes, the Podmaster also felt very bad for Donkey. I felt less bad for Donkey because I was having a hard time getting emotionally invested. But to plus one your point.
Yeah.
The Podmaster was awing a lot at Donkey being sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And somewhere in here in the montage, he runs into the dragon.
Yeah.
And I guess forgives her for trying to sexually assault him.
Well, because she's looking all sad too next to the lake.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, I guess I'll console this big, thick woman who wants to fuck my brains out. Who I guess is a woman and not an animal. I guess that's capable of higher brain function. But just a mute, which is also fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's funny.
Anyway, so
She's hot and...
So they take a dragon to the castle.
Yeah.
And I do like when they land and Donkey is like, "Okay, baby, go have some fun.
Go have some fun chasing the knights."
Yeah.
I want to see that. If this movie needed a little bit more, give me like 3 minutes of the dragon chasing the knights around.
Pretty sure we ran out of action sequence budget.
Yeah.
And they were just like, the dragon's off doing something else.
We got to wrap this thing up.
Because we can't animate any more dragon action. We've used our entire budget for fire breath.
They're doing the wedding. And Shrek bursts in and the ogre has fallen in love with the princess.
Meme.
Great meme.
Yeah.
And
then she turns into, because like it's sundown.
It's sundown. She turns into the
so
ogre.
She turns into the ogre Fiona, and Shrek's like, "Oh, you're an ogre lady. That explains why you burp so much and liked making balloon animals out of snakes." And Farquaad's like, "Well, now that she's hideous, I'll just keep her in prison, but be legally married to her for status." And okay, I gave this movie. I'm giving this movie credit where credit is due. I did it with the mascot gag. I'll do it again here. I had misremembered that what happens here is like the dragon busts through the window, eats Farquaad, and then at the very end of the movie, when everybody's bopping around and dancing and singing their little song, that we see Farquaad and he's actually alive and in a full body cast or something. That doesn't happen.
No.
I misremembered that.
We eat Farquaad.
And he's just dead.
He's just dead.
We just eat this little John Lithgow shit.
We burp out the crown, but he's gone.
Yes, and that, again, raised the score for this movie by like a half star for me alone. Where I was like, oh yeah, we fucking just killed the villain in this kid's movie and he didn't come back and be like, I'm actually fine and I learned my lesson.
Yeah, I respected that.
Yes, I respect that a lot as well, and I think it's a good choice, especially considering the tone of this movie. For them to just straight up be like, no, he gets eaten by a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fun and good. And I liked it. It's also funny when Fiona kisses Shrek and levitates like it's obviously like the Beauty and the Beast thing. It's like a clear reference to that. But her body goes more extreme than the Beast does, where she like emits like a pulse of energy that blasts all the windows out of the fucking church. And I was like, is it safe to be?
And then the dragon knocks out the one that's left.
Is everybody getting like irradiated. They're gonna end up being like fucking ghouls from Fallout for witnessing True Love's kiss.
Oh, it's like
It just seems dangerous to be in the path of this wave of light that comes out
it's
of it.
like spoilers for Death Stranding, the video game Death Stranding. That a portion of that game is devoted to the thought of like, what if a hot girl was actually a weapon of mass destruction and caused the end of the world? I guess Fiona is like a nuclear bomb too.
Yeah, is apparently the True Love's form, right? True Love's kiss will make you take on True Love's form or whatever she says. Apparently that is just enriched uranium.
They kiss.
Yeah.
Shrek covers up the camera with his hand, which is fun. We haven't had a fourth wall break in this movie.
Yeah.
It's a little out of place, but
It's
whatever.
fine.
And then I saw her face, and I'm a believer.
Yeah.
We end with a song and dance number
Yeah.
that maybe goes on a hair too long.
I think it existing in the movie at all is too long for
Well,
me.
it is like you said, like maybe this has happened before this movie, but this is definitely like
Yeah.
the inception point of every B tier or C tier animated movie ending with a dance number.
Because we just got to hit 90 minutes somehow.
Yeah.
You know how we do that? Just animate 2 minutes of the characters dancing around, and we'll put some well-known song over it.
Yeah.
Put some fucking rock or pop song over it, and have them play us out.
Yep.
And we can call this an hour and a half.
Let's call it an episode.
Yeah,
while we're
let's
at
do
it.
that.
That's Shrek. Shrek is love. Shrek is life.
Shrek. The Shrekening. There has been a Shrekening.
I ask you.
Oh, God. Who asked who last time?
I think I asked you.
Okay.
Justus, is Shrek the greatest movie ever made?
David. I picked this movie as my bad movie. Okay, sorry. I thought that was important to get on mic for this movie specifically.
Better out than in, I always say.
I picked this movie as my bad movie. Because I remembered hating this movie. I think even earlier in the episode, I did use the word hate. I hated this movie. I do think I need to amend that. I think not just from our conversation, but like just watching it last night, I was like, I don't think I was giving this movie enough credit, in how I was talking about my memory of it. And I think, like I said before, some of that might just be me being reactionary against how much I saw like memes and shit about it, right? And being like, you don't understand, it's bad, right? Watching it again, I do still think it's bad. I don't think this movie's good, personally. But I do think saying that I hated it is maybe being a little hyperbolic. I didn't have a great time watching Shrek. I did not enjoy Shrek. There were things in this movie, though, that worked for me a lot better than I expected them to. And there were moments of this movie where I was like, hey, you almost have something here. You're onto something. I like where this is going. Moments like that did not happen at all in our other bad movie this month, The Emoji Movie. The Emoji Movie was like going through a Dante Alighieri-esque purgatory, where everything was bland and joyless, and everything was just like, I was just waiting for it to end.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Whereas Shrek, I was like, okay, there's peaks and valleys with this thing.
Yeah.
There's maybe more valleys than peaks, and maybe the valleys are a little bit deeper than the peaks are high. Hey, nice burp. Sorry, the dog just also burped. She's, she knows what the vibe is on this episode. All that being said, no, Shrek is not the greatest movie ever made. This viewing of this movie did not get me to like it, but it does have me admitting that I was being harder on this movie than it deserved.
Okay.
But I still don't like it, and I still think it's bad. David, is Shrek the greatest movie ever made?
So, Justus.
Yeah.
This is like right on the edge for me because
Uh-huh.
I loved this watch of this movie.
I can't wait hearing which side of the edge this is
I
on.
haven't seen it in a long time. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and admittedly, that is playing into my enjoyment of this movie, as well as some of those memes.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit more tolerant of some memes than you are.
I just
and especially,
don't like the
especially
internet.
the memes of the time, the Shrek memes of the time.
Yeah.
was the meme landscape of the internet was a lot different than it is now.
Yeah.
Anyway, but all that to say, watching it this time, I think the animation is still really impressive for the time. I think the voice performances from Mike Myers and especially Eddie Murphy are really, really good. And a lot of the humor, as much as it is like a mile a minute, is really clever and funny and still made me laugh. I think the concept of putting a fairy tale monster in the role of a fairy tale protagonist is pretty well executed here. Maybe not realized to the fullest potential in the way that it could have been, if it was more like a Monty Python movie or a Mel Brooks movie. But like, of childhood animated movies that were important to me, this might be one of the best.
Wow.
So that all being said, no, I don't think this is the greatest movie ever made, but I had a fucking ball watching it, a few hours before coming into the recording booth today.
Again,
with you.
I'm very glad that you feel that way about this movie. I think it's good that you like this movie, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be on board in the same way that you are.
If that's fine. After it got to be about halfway through the movie, and I'm like, I thought our Event Horizon episode was going to be the one where we have a big disagreement.
Yeah.
I think it might be Shrek. I think Shrek might be the one, because I am loving watching Shrek right now.
Yeah.
And I did not expect to be having that much of a good time with this movie.
I honestly sort of feel like, knowing your general feelings on Event Horizon, I do think we do have maybe a larger difference of opinion on Shrek than we do on Event Horizon. Because you don't dislike Event Horizon. It's just there's things about that movie that frustrate you.
Sure. I think you dislike Shrek more than I dislike Event Horizon.
I think that's probably accurate. Yeah.
But no, not the greatest movie ever made.
Right.
Had a great time with it. It was a joy and a pleasure
Well,
to revisit Shrek from 2001.
I'm glad I could provide that joy and pleasure to you by picking it as my bad movie.
Directed by
A couple
Andrew
people.
Adamson, who was on Death Grips album for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
And Vicky Jenson
Yes.
from DreamWorks.
That's
we wouldn't
right.
have, without Steven Spielberg,
We wouldn't have
founding
Shrek.
DreamWorks, we wouldn't have had Shrek. Thanks, Steven.
Thanks, Steven.
Next week, we're watching the Pride and Prejudice with
Yes.
Keira Knightley.
Next week is a Podmaster mandated episode.
Yeah, because we have a few episodes until we do Halloween, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck to watch, so I asked your wife to pick something, and she decided to pick Pride and Prejudice.
I sort of think because this is High Priestess Pod mandate, it should count as an unofficial TGMEM-iversary episode.
Okay.
This is the actual canon finale of
Yeah.
TGMEM-iversary is Shrek, but I sort of think unofficially, because the Podmaster has never mandated a movie for us to watch before, I do think Pride and Prejudice as Podmaster mandate is sort of like us kicking off our official second year of doing the show.
Sure, okay.
Just because her voice being heard in that strongly on the show.
She's not going to be appearing on the
No.
episode.
Sorry, metaphorical voice.
But yeah.
Yeah, her influence being felt that strongly on the show has not happened in the history of the show.
Yeah.
And she will truly be puppeteering next week's episode by picking Pride and Prejudice for us.
Yeah. And if she watches it with you, which she may or may not,
Yeah.
she is known to watch a movie and fall asleep.
She does whatever the fuck she wants.
She does. Let me know if she thinks it's the greatest movie ever made or not. That can be her unofficial first opinion on the show.
I will definitely do that.
Prior to her actual first appearance.
Yeah, I'll try and get her verdict if she watches it with me.
Join us for that.
Yep.
Thank you guys for listening. I was going to say watching, but that's not how this works.
Nope.
Thanks for listening. We love you so much. Happy TGMEM-iversary. Join us next week for a little dessert round of TGMEM-iversary with Pride and Prejudice. And as always, later, dipshits!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast, and if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.